Hi everyone, welcome to the Class E podcast. I'm your host, Mary Sturgill. This is the podcast that's brought to you through a partnership between the Hill Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Communication Studies Department here at Furman University. We're bringing this episode to you in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. So we're so happy to have you here with us today because we have a very special guest. Olivia Esquivel is probably the premier female entrepreneur in the entire upstate, and I'm so happy that she's here today.
Wow.
I'm so glad you could come.
I will come any day you call me that. I'll be here tomorrow.
Come again and again. I think entrepreneurship is probably bred into you. Probably.
Yeah, I think it might be at this point, yeah.
Tell us about a little bit of your entrepreneurial background for people who might not know.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Cuban American, first generation American. My sister and I are both Furman alumni. I was a communications major, but we were the firstborn in the United States. Mm-hmm. So both my mom's family, my dad's family left Cuba, during the time to leave Cuba when communism was really getting started and taking a toll on that country. And so they had to leave all of their lives behind, come here to the United States and start over. And so I think it's just, since I was born, it's just been a matter of you work and you side hustle and you do what you need to do to put food on the table and get to the next level, always with the intention to, study very hard and get to the top of your class. And for us, it was us being my sister Karen and I, we were always the first, so it's kind of easy to break barriers when you're the first because you could do nothing and be like the first, right? But we were the first to go, to a private, liberal arts school away from Florida. And then I went and got my master's, and I started actually from another communications professor. She was an adjunct professor here, Robin Zimmerman. After I graduated, hired me at what was then Greenville Memorial Hospital to do their public relations and community relations. And after a few years there, I started my own PR firm, and then from then it just, I haven't stopped. Yeah. So
she's had many enumerations of many businesses throughout the years. She was a comm studies major, so we're proud of that. So let's talk about what you're doing now, because most people probably know you for Southern Juicery, but Southern Juicery is not the only thing that you have going on right now. But let's talk about Southern Juicery. How did that idea come about?
So when I left my career at Prisma and went on my own to start doing my own public relations firm, I was focused primarily always on health and wellness and professional athletes. And so I worked with the U.S. hand cycling and did a lot of work with Paralympic athletes and was traveling around the country with them and really kind of learning from their diet, and actually started eating a raw vegan lifestyle myself, which was easy to do because I was based in Miami and I was in Denver and I was in Austin and I was in all of these places.
And when you have all those good influences.
Yes, I mean, you monkey see, monkey do. And so, and also it was very accessible in those places. So when I decided to come back to Greenville, I lived here close to Furman University. And at that time, in like 2011, 2012, I'd have to drive, to the other side of town to get to Whole Foods to kind of continue that lifestyle. And I was just like, gosh, I cannot be the only one who just wants a green juice, that doesn't feel like doing this at home. And I really felt like Greenville had kind of reached that point, or was getting to that point where they were ready to kind of take the next step in terms of a culinary plant-based experience. And so I asked Carl Subasinski, who is a really well-known restaurateur here in Greenville, if he would sit down with me. I had known him just casually, being a patron of his for many years. And I just said, look, I have this idea. I travel around the country. Greenville has to have something plant-based. What do you think about it? And we started this conversation of noting that, his chefs and his restaurants were getting more and more requests for this plant-based, health-conscious menu request. And so we kind of started from there, and oddly 6 months later we opened Southern Pressed Juicery. So
that's pretty fast. 6 months.
Really fast, yeah.
Because there's a lot that has to happen.
There's a lot to do to open a restaurant, particularly one that's never been opened before. So
did people push back on the concept at all?
I think Greenville is such an entrepreneur-focused town. For me, it dabbles between that being a small town, but also really prideful of its local owners and entrepreneurs. I mean, almost all of downtown is locally owned, with an exception of like a CVS and Anthropology. And even when those came, it was like, everybody was kind of like really shocked that we were doing that. So for me, it wasn't so much an uphill battle having Carl, having me by the hand. And of course, he had already earned the respect of everybody in the town, sort of being one of the ones responsible for revitalizing downtown Greenville. But really the uphill battle was kind of communicating and explaining the benefits of the product.
Right.
The cost of the product, why it cost what it costs, the process, just the whole concept in general. We live and die on regulars. I mean, we obviously have, now we've become this really cool town, touristy town, but man, our regulars have pulled us through. And so they trust us. We try things out on them. They tell us yes or no. And, I think it's just a give and take. We listen to them and they listen to us and they see us as the experts. And for that reason, I think we've been able to do really well.
Yeah. Speaking of pulling through, the pandemic affected the restaurant industry tremendously.
Yeah.
How did you guys make it through that?
Well,
we're not completely
this is always
still
a difficult conversation for me because you have a little bit of that guilt because we all watch so many places close down and struggle through that. And it's not that we were better than them or that they weren't doing the right thing. I think it was a matter of our product was a health-focused product. Right. And I think people were so desperate to try anything and everything. Vaccine, holistic approaches, spreading apart, just let us do it all to get through this. And so, we were already sort of primed in our business landscape, already doing app orders and kind of, what's pretty like forward for restaurants, curbside, stuff like that. So we were already, the model was already there and our regulars already knew that they could order on the app, that it could be a to-go service versus a dine-in service. Right. So that kind of helped us already because we didn't have to learn that. They didn't have to learn that. They were already trained in that way. But mostly I think it was the health-focused products. And obviously we tried a lot of things that didn't work. We tried a lot of things that did work. We obviously were being really price conscious. We did buy one, get one free acai bowls for 2.5 years, twice a week, and I think people really, what I heard time and time again was just, thank you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to stay in when financials are tough, when we don't know what else to do, when we don't even know if we're allowed to go out, So it wasn't easy. And I say I feel bad about that just because for us, although it wasn't easy, we had the best financials we've ever had. And so you feel a little bit of
a little survivor's guilt.
Yeah, a little bit, and I don't say that in a pompous way, but I say that, it gave us the confidence, I think, as a team to say, okay, if and when, crap hits the fan again, we at least know we have a product that people will not be, because we worried, okay, the first thing people are going to do is they're going to cut out convenience. Right. They're going to cut out the movie theaters. They're going to,
anything that they view
trim all the fat. Trim all the fat. And so we were right there and oh my God, we're the fat. We're the nice to have. Go once or twice a week. Once we realized that we weren't the fat and that people were really seeing us as, a necessity to get well, then it was okay, we can do this. And we're not just going to ride on into the sunset. We're going to make sure that you guys have an entry point to stay in. It's one thing to have a lot of sales. It's another thing to look and be okay, you're selling everything for half off. Right. Sales doesn't always equate money in the bank, you know, but for us, it was just a matter of helping people through. I think just a realistic approach communications wise, we use social a lot. And me just getting on Instagram, for instance, and just saying, guys, we don't know if we're going to be open tomorrow, but I can tell you we have an entire back of the house kitchen full of fresh food that if I don't get this out today, it's going to go bad. Right. So buy one, get one free. We had 2-hour waits. Yeah. Nobody had anywhere else to go. Right. At the very beginning.
The only other thing that was open were fast food restaurants who kind of had that going.
And we were even concerned that we would get to a point where you would have to, there were other states where you'd have to show where you were going to be on the road. It was really scary for a while. And so, just continuing to get those messages of, thank you, don't worry, I got nowhere else to be, I'll wait 2 hours for a bowl. It was, I think, this give and take between us and the community and people just telling us, we just want to see you on the other side of this.
One of your specialties is branding and marketing and that kind of thing. And you actually own a company a branding and event company that does that. So tell us a little bit about that company. This is her second company.
Public affair really started before. So that's what I started, my own PR firm when I left Prisma. And that's kind of what I was doing when I started Southern Pressed. So public affair always sort of takes a backseat. I'm not really that active in that anymore. Now it's almost turned into helping other juice bars open across the country, helping other small businesses with their branding, with kind of figuring out, what their voice is, helping them with that insecurity, that like imposter syndrome feeling.
Which we all entrepreneurs
have. And I just think that's the hardest part of it, and is getting over that. So a lot of times that sort of consulting work for me has just turned into helping other entrepreneurs get on their feet, figure out, how they get to the next level. It's really hard to go from small to medium, and it's because there's growth there that hurts, and you start having to cut your profit to grow, and you're like, dang it, I just started making money, But so a lot of it is that focus. But for right now, Southern Pressed is my main focus, growing that brand. To several units. We just opened 2 more units. We have a subset of Southern Pressed Juicery called Wild Crafted Collection, which is a group of adaptogens. So kind of taking the idea of a plant-based lifestyle in a fridge or in a smoothie or in a bowl, and figuring out how to get that health in hand for folks that is a shelf-stable product. So, where that leads, I don't know, but that's the fun part for me, as a woman, is like, okay, so maybe from, when I sit at night and I think about what's next, after we're done with Southern Pressed, or it takes on a life of its own, or it doesn't need me anymore, whatever that looks like. There's so much white space, for clean beauty and makeup and holistic products, that for me, as a girl, that's the fun part, right? Makeup and skincare and all that.
I love that. I love the way that your brain thinks. It's so fun for us to have you here just because of that.
You.
I mean, I could probably just let her talk for an hour
and
not ask no questions.
I always talk a lot.
And I love it. And all of us would be sitting here pen in hand, taking notes. So you just mentioned that you're branching out Southern Juicery, and you just opened how many more? 2 more stores?
We just opened 2 stores. So now we have a total of 3 stores. And I think it's important to note, I've had other stores that I've closed, and I think that's one of the things that I always talk to entrepreneurs about, knowing that this is an entrepreneur-based podcast, is, I had a shop in Austin. When I look back on it now, I think, okay, I frame it differently in my head now than I did then, right? But for me, it was Austin at the time was a really hip spot for juice bars.
I completely see that.
And I wanted to know if I could compete. And for me, I knew we were the best here. We've been pinned the best in the Southeast and even on the East Coast. And I don't mean to brag about that, but I know I've got that, right? Because we're so different than other juice bars. We're chef-led. We've got this culinary experience, and we're just different. We're almost in our own category. Not in a better category, just in a different category. We lead ourselves in a different way with different priorities than most juice bars and plant-based restaurants. But I really wanted to see if I could compete in Austin, just like I would want to see if I could compete in LA. And we did. And we, had all of the celebs that you would want in there. But Austin is just weird.
And that's what they say. Keep Austin weird.
Yeah, it's a weird place. And they don't necessarily want what the other cities want, a clean, open, normal hours, very accessible place. They thrive on, that weirdness. They'd rather drive 10 miles outside of downtown to a guy with a handlebar mustache that's open 3:30 to 4:30 every other Thursday on the second moon of the month. And it's like, it's weird, but that guy will have a line out the door. And so, we had to make the financial decision that store wasn't cutting it, but that opened the door for us for Whole Foods, because that's where Whole Foods is based. And so I always try to talk to other entrepreneurs about, it's not a failure, it's a learn. Yes, financially it failed, but we could have stayed there and tried to make it work, but it's why bleed out when you can just say, okay, this is what we learned from here. The biggest thing is the product the same? Is the guest having the same experience?
Exactly.
And all of that we nailed. It was just a matter of foot traffic that we just couldn't because we're not from there. And I think that's so important for us here in Greenville is that we just, we didn't have friends and family to call and be like, hey, we're slow today. Can you come in? But that's okay. I mean, it opened so many doors for us. And I think it gave me the confidence, even though we closed that shop, to know we are the best.
Right.
And, other juice bars around us started, coming in and saying like, can you teach me that? Or, and so that for me was the fun part, was just giving me that reassurance of you're not an imposter.
Right. It's not a failure, even though, yes, you failed, you closed the store, and most people would consider that a failure, right? But you learned so much from it, and the connections that you made from that were well worth that experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Talk about the Whole Foods connection.
Yeah, so Whole Foods is based in Austin.
Yeah.
And so when we first opened in Austin, they came in, I remember I was back in Greenville. I was dropping off my kid at daycare and my phone rings with this Austin number and I'm like, okay, it must be somebody at the shop. And I answer and it's this very high up person at Whole Foods. And she says, I just went into your shop at the Domain and it is the best juice bar I've ever been to. And
that's high praise.
Yes. And I was like, who is this? Started this conversation at that time. It was, I think, before Amazon had bought in and they were having these, Whole Foods was opening these concepts of what they call their 365 neighborhood stores. They wanted us to come in and do juice bars, stores within stores, branded as Southern Pressed Juicery.
Like Starbucks has done in many stores. Yeah.
Exactly. So we started on that conversation. And that was going really well. And they were actually in downtown Austin, there is the original Whole Foods, which is like 3 stories high. Everybody goes there. And they were oddly going to open up a 365 store just down the road. And it was big news. So we were supposed to be in that primo location. Amazon came in, they stopped doing 365 stores, but that opened the door for us to start having conversations with them about getting our juice on their shelves. And so that's where we are now. We've basically been approved for the Southeast version. We're not in the stores yet, the Southeast region, which is like 7 states, but that's sort of where I am now in the scheme of things is growing the brand, figuring out what that looks like. Is it brick and mortars? Is it, wholesaling to other big box stores? Is it this new space and herbal supplements? I don't know.
A combination of all
I have
of the
no
above.
idea, to be very clear. But I'm sure as hell going to try them all.
Right, exactly.
And I think, the market will tell me what's working and what's not working.
That just gave me goosebumps because I love that spirit of I know this works. I'm going to try this. I think this will work. I love that. And that's the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
It's like Sarah Blakely keeping her notebook of ideas. Right?
And it's just, you have to be so flexible. And it's, that's maybe, I think for some people that want to be entrepreneurs, but they're control freaks. Right. I'm like, are you type A or type B?
I know a few of those.
Let's start there. For me, you have to have some release of control.
Right.
Because like, for instance, right now I've got 3 units. The downtown, I know what sells in downtown Greenville. I close my eyes and I know what's selling there today. I know what my numbers are going to look like. I know what the volume is going to look like. Yeah. Then you open Charlotte and it's totally the opposite. Yeah. And you're like, what? But I put, that's why you can't put all your eggs in one basket. Right. You have to believe in your product, and I do, but I think you have to leave enough of a variety in whatever it is that you do that there's several entry points for the guests to come in and find something that they want. Yeah. I cannot be just a juice place. I can't survive on that. There's not enough people in a day that just want a green juice. Some people want smoothies. Charlotte apparently just wants smoothies. Yeah. They are like 60-40 smoothies to everything else, which is the complete opposite of downtown Greenville.
Is that a matter of training them once they get in the door for the smoothies? Then they're like, oh, well, let me try that juice.
A lot of it is training your staff. Yeah. And so that's for me the most important part is training them, because they'll listen to me and they can see, and I'll talk business here for a minute, but they can see me take somebody that was going to buy a $10 juice to checking out with a $75 ticket. Yeah. And they're like, how did you do that? And it's just about making the guests feel comfortable in whatever experience you're in, whether you're running a podcast, whether you want to make the guests spill their guts. Right. Okay? Right. Because once they spill their guts, then you can come in with the fix.
Yep. 100%. That's the story.
Yes.
Right?
It's
Once you know their
making them
story.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Once you know their story, they will tell you everything.
Right.
I'm struggling with this. I want to fix this. These are my goals. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whether you own I own retail stores, clothing, baby stores for a long time. They would come in and they would tell me exactly what they want. Right. Now it's up for me as an entrepreneur to read my guest and have the solution for them.
Right.
So part of it is really training our associates to speak with authority. And I think because a lot of them are younger, on the younger side, in their mid-20s, and they're really like, they come to us because they love the product, they love the hours of operation, they love the money, they get tipped really well, they make great money, but it's a happy place to work. I think part of my training with them is teaching them to speak with authority in terms of, this is the juice that helps with this, this, and this.
Right.
And so once you start speaking with authority, it's like, yeah, I do need that. Yeah, give me a 6-pack holder.
If you speak with that authority and that confidence, and you know your products, and you can match those products to the needs of the customer, which is what you were doing in front of them, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Then your customer, that's how that check turns in from $16 check to a $75 check, because that customer wants all of those issues kind of.
Well, and the point I think is, it's not just teaching, other people to have that entrepreneur mindset of like, I got to make this sale, and this is how much.
It's not even about the sale, is it?
It's not. Yeah. The point is that the guest doesn't come back the next day and return the juice and say, I wasn't happy. Right. You're not selling anything fraudulent. The product is primo, right? The product does what we say it's going to do. Yeah. It's a matter of squashing other people's fears. Yeah. Like, can I do this? Well, am I going to be hungry? Well, I only eat meat, and it's just a matter of, all right, well, then let's try it together. Sit down, sample every single juice, and you tell me what you like. Yeah. And so it's just a matter of really like breaking down barriers. And isn't that what it is for everything in life? Just
100%.
Can we break down barriers to get to a conversation where you can help me and I can help you? What is it that you want?
The best salesman, and I'm doing air quotes here, for those of you who are listening to the podcast, some of you are watching it on YouTube, but some of you are listening, are people who actually meet the needs of the customer. And that's what you're doing, and that's what you're teaching your folks how to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, when you go in to buy a car and like the guy's talking to me about the engine and I'm like, dude, I don't care about that. Right. Talk to me about the seatbelts. I'm a mom. Talk to me about where the airbags are and do the seats heat up because my back hurts.
Exactly.
These are my two priorities.
Mine too. I love a good heated seat. That's the best thing ever.
Can you point me in the direction of what I need?
Right, exactly. So we talked about the failure in Austin or something that some people might construe as failure. Are there other mistakes or failures, again, in quotation marks, air quotes, that might help our listeners kind of avoid some of the pain that you went through as an entrepreneur?
I mean, I was talking about this with some of my managers yesterday. We just opened up this new space, right? And it's the Southern Pressed building headquarters in Lawrence and Verde, if you're listening and you're in Greenville. And it's got this tremendous back of the house, which is, restaurant talk for kitchen. Right. And so we're starting to pump out more food there than we normally do in other places. And one of the associates said, I need more kitchen. And I'm like, oh my God, child, you have no idea the catering amount of food that I have seen coming out of Sobeys on the side for Sobeys, Table 301 restaurant downtown that is a tenth of the space. Right. And I'm talking about, 1,000 people events. So for me, one of the things that I learned from another juice bar owner who's a friend of mine and that had a really successful, really fast trajectory up in Miami and then fell flat. Matthew Sherman. So one of the things that I actually asked him at a conference we were at is I said, what do you wish you had done different? Because he had a really successful unit in South Beach, and then he opened with Whole Foods, like I was going to do. And he said, I wish I had known that I could squeeze more out of the lemon before I started, wanting more.
So is that metaphorical?
Yeah, I think he meant it. I think he wanted more lemon. No, I think he realized, he said, I was doing like $4 million out of the store, and I was so happy with that number that I was like, I want more $4 million stores. Right. And I started incurring all of these overhead costs without realizing this store can do $8 million at the same cost. And so, I think that's something that I have to remind myself all the time, that growth doesn't always have to look look like 10, 20 units
Right.
of one product or of one store. It's how much profit are you making at the end of the day?
Yeah.
You can do more out of what you have. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of learning how to scale and learning how to grow in the smart way. And sometimes we do that wrong.
We see it all the time with companies who
I
grow
mean,
really fast and then fold.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's like, and some of that is greed. Some of that is just, well, if I've got one, then two must be better. And I've got two, then four must be better. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not.
Right.
I spoke to a friend of mine, Steve Spinks, from the Spinks family that owns, obviously, Spinks gas stations in Greenville. And so it was the opposite. And so I asked him, Steve, how do you go, if you're not quite making it in one unit or you're just breaking even,
Right.
how do you get over that hump or justifying opening 2, 3, 4,
Right, 'cause how many
freaking
stores
200
do they
more
have? Right,
units
yeah.
that they have all the way down to the low country? And he
Right.
said, sometimes it just works.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about cornering the market and showing the consumer that you're the option. And so that, they see you on Stone and Main, but then they got to see you again on Wade Hampton, and they got to see you again on all of these different corners. And
Right.
then you become the place to go,
Right.
because everywhere you turn, there you are. And so as long as you can replicate the experience time and time again, then it's like you become ingrained and you become part of,
Part of people's mindset,
dinner
right.
conversation. You know
Right,
what I mean?
yeah.
Like you become a regular in their mind.
You're developing that brand loyalty.
Right, exactly. And so, I think it's a struggle between knowing when to make that leap and
Right.
when you're going to crash and burn,
And you never know, because none
Never
of us are
know.
clairvoyant.
Never know.
Well, some of us might be.
But some of that is just kind of getting rid of the fear,
Right.
and you just have to close your eyes and jump in head first,
Yeah.
and know that you have a backup. Like when I started a public affair, I didn't quit my job until I had those
Right.
contracts lined
Right.
up.
Right.
And so that's the first thing I always find entrepreneurs are like, I want to quit my job. And I'm like, don't you quit that job until you've got more money coming in.
Right.
Like you can squeeze more lemon out of that. You can do both of them at the
Absolutely.
same time until
100%.
you've got one
Yeah.
that you're like, okay, I can feed myself for the next week
Right.
if I quit my job. So, I think I just look to that as a constant reminder of like, you can do more, you can do more, you can do more.
I love what you say about that, because I own a production company and I love my job here at Furman.
Right.
And I do both.
Yeah.
I take a couple clients a year, whatever I can.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know, don't
Yeah.
quit one job until you're really sure,
Right,
but
right.
at the same time, take that leap of faith.
Yeah,
So,
It's hard to know. I mean,
Yeah.
but I think it's becoming more and more easy now, thanks to COVID, with this work from home mentality.
Completely
You know,
agree,
I
yeah.
think that is going to spring on this entire new generation of entrepreneurs, because suddenly they can work from home, do two things at one time, still make their day-to-day 9-to-5 job work while they figure out and test markets in other areas. And
Right.
so, I think that we're better for that.
I've said that many times, that if there's a silver lining to COVID, it's proven that we can work differently than we have in the past.
Yes.
And that remote working does work. I know I'm actually more productive at home
Of course.
in both my work for the university, but also in my personal life,
Sure.
than I am here, because here we have so many distractions, and,
Right.
and I don't want to call conversations with people distractions, but
Yeah.
they do pull you away.
Yeah.
Let's talk about advice. Any other advice that you can think of that you have for young entrepreneurs?
Like I just got a text today from an associate that works for me, an hourly associate. She goes to Clemson. She's a comm major. I had a conversation with her, I don't know, maybe earlier this week about social media. And I'm always an open book. And so I always tell, my associates, I'm like, what do you want to know? What do you want to learn? What are you good at? What do you enjoy? And so, in a conversation with some associates the other day, I said, I need help with social media. I'm turning my focus to social media. I can't cover 3 stores at one time and grow, all of these other things. And she said, Olivia, I want to do it. I want to do it. And so we had a little conversation, and I let her talk about it. And then just before I walked in, she texted me. She said, Olivia, I want to follow up on our conversation from Monday.
Excellent.
I'm really interested. I will continue my hourly work at Southern Pressed Juicery, but I need to grow my portfolio. What can I do to sit alongside you, work with you? Can you come in tomorrow before my shift so I can show you some of my work?
Yeah.
And to me, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I did to Carl. That's what she's doing to me, and not in any stretch in the imagination that I'm Carl. But it's what we're doing right now.
Right.
It's like the admission of, I want to be here. I am here. Can you help me? One of the things that does kind of peeve me now as No, truly it does. I mean, if I had probably one piece of advice, it is to not be pompous.
Right.
Because I'm more than happy to help anybody, to give anybody the opportunity, and to even pay them if my budget warrants it and if the product warrants it.
Right.
But one thing I cannot stand is when a college or a pre-college person or a right out from college person comes in and hands me, tells me that I need them, and then they hand me a contract for something that, you would hand me
right.
with 20 years experience.
Right.
And it's not that you're not worth it.
Right.
It's that you have to scrub the floors before you can
100%
be the CEO.
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
like, I wash dishes, Carl washes dishes. For me, I want to see that you're in it. I want to see that you want to grow. And I'm not trying to get everybody for free.
Right.
But it's like, there's just, I think, wisdom and experience.
Mm-hmm.
And these, I call them kids because I'm old now, but these, college age folks are so knowledgeable.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is insane the talent they have. But at the end of the day, talent does not equate experience.
Right.
And so you cannot hand me a $5,000, retainer contract to run my social media.
Right.
I'm gonna be like, get the hell out of here. You still have,
Right.
You still haven't returned your book at the library.
Right.
But so, that's the one thing, like I'm happy to bring them in, happy
Yeah.
to listen to them. I'm the first one to say, I don't know what I'm doing. You're the expert in this field. But I think be a little bit humble.
Humble. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Because that's how I am when I sit down. Like I sit down with Carl and,
Right.
his COO and whatever, and we're looking at my financials, and I know my things in and out. I'm the one that's there, and I'm like a sponge.
Yes.
Anything they say, I'm like, okay, noted.
Right.
And they may not have even walked in the restaurant to know.
And that's so important, I think, for all of us to understand. Just because we get out of university or whatever, or we're finished with whatever course or whatever the case may be, I view myself, and I think most entrepreneurs view themselves this way, I am a lifelong learner.
Yes.
There's always something that I do not know. There's even something that I consider myself an expert at, because technology changes so often that there are things that I don't know that I need to learn. And I go through life looking at everything, what can I learn from this?
Right.
And I think that is probably, I think you're correct. I think that's the best piece of advice that anybody could give any young entrepreneur, is that learn from everything. You don't know everything,
Right.
But a lot of times you don't realize. I tell my students this all the time. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
I'm here to help you learn what you
Right.
don't know, so that
Yeah.
you can learn it.
Right.
Right. And I think that's
Absolutely.
exactly what you're saying, and the importance of that mentor who can take you through that process.
Right.
I mean, and just in this conversation alone, Olivia, you've mentioned 3 mentors.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I think that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to thank you for joining us
Oh my
today.
gosh.
Like I said, we could talk for hours because she is so
What an
knowledgeable.
ego boost it is to be here.
She is so knowledgeable, and just it's such a pleasure to talk to.
Oh my
So,
gosh, it's my pleasure.
I so appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for calling me in.
I just want to remind everybody too that you are a mom doing all of this stuff with 2 kids at home. How old are the kids?
You're 6 and 8.
6 and 8. So yeah, she's running all over the place, doing all of this stuff. So it's such an inspiration
Wow.
to many, many women, especially I think, and men too, for that matter. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you.
All right, that does it for this episode of the Class E podcast. I'm your host, Mary Sturgill. Remember, this podcast is brought to you through a partnership between the Hill Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship here at Furman University and the Communication Studies Department. And by the way, folks, just to tell you about one of their programs, Greenville Starts is an 8-week cohort program where budding entrepreneurs, like the people that we were just talking to today, can come and learn from people and get mentors and figure out how to get funding and figure out how to bring whatever their venture is at whatever level it is to the next level. It's a great, great program. I was in the first cohort. Sad news is the fall cohort is full, but they are still taking names for the spring cohort. So get yourself on that list, and you can do that just by Googling Greenville Starts with Furman, and it should be the first link that pops up there when you Google that. Also remember that there are 2 ways that you can catch the podcast now. Of course, you can listen to us wherever you listen to your podcast. You can find us on YouTube, so if you don't want to listen to us, you can watch us, but make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you are notified every time we have a new episode coming out. That does it for us. I'm your host, Mary Sturgill. Dream big, everybody.